I want you to imagine something with me right now. Imagine waking up on December 31st, 2026, and looking back at this exact moment, at who you were when you first heard these words. And I want you to picture yourself overwhelmed with gratitude, maybe even moved to tears, because the distance between who you are right now and who you will have become is so vast, so unrecognizable, that you can barely comprehend how it happened. Not through struggle, not through force, not through years of grinding away at the same old patterns, but through something so simple, so profound, that most people walk right past it every single day of their lives. A handful of words, spoken with intention, repeated with faith, and surrendered into the infinite creative power of your subconscious mind. I have spent my entire life studying the greatest mystery available to human beings, and that mystery is this. Why do some people seem to effortlessly attract wealth, health, love, and opportunity, while others, often more talented, more educated, more deserving by every external measure, struggle endlessly? And what I discovered changed everything. The answer is not out there in the world. It has never been out there. The answer lives in a place most people have never been properly introduced to. It lives in the subconscious mind, that vast, infinite, creative intelligence that runs your body, beats your heart, orchestrates every cell, and most importantly, builds the circumstances of your life according to the patterns you feed it. And here is what most people do not understand. Your subconscious mind does not argue. It does not judge. It does not question whether what you are telling it is true or false, good or bad, possible or impossible. It simply accepts, and then it creates. So if you walk through life repeating the same worried thoughts, the same fearful assumptions, the same limiting beliefs about money, about love, about your worthiness, your subconscious mind says, yes, this is what we are creating, and it gets to work making that your reality. But when you learn to speak to your subconscious mind with clarity, with feeling, with absolute conviction, when you plant seeds of prosperity, health, love, and confidence into that fertile soil every single day, everything changes. And I mean everything. By the end of this conversation, you are going to know exactly what to say, how to say it, and why it works. Not because I want you to believe me, but because I want you to test it. I want you to prove it to yourself. Because 2026 is not just another year on the calendar, it is your opportunity to step into a completely new version of yourself, a version that lives with ease, a version that expects good things, a version that knows, deep in their bones, that the universe is conspiring in their favor. And it all begins with what you say to yourself when no one else is listening. Let me be very clear about what I am offering you today. This is not motivation that fades by tomorrow morning. This is not positive thinking that crumbles the moment life gets hard. This is the science of the mind, the mechanics of manifestation, the spiritual laws that govern your existence, whether you are aware of them or not. I am going to show you exactly how your words shape your world, how your repeated thoughts become hardened beliefs, how those beliefs become automatic feelings, how those feelings determine your actions, and how your actions construct the life you are living right now. Every single detail, and then I am going to give you the specific words, the exact affirmations, the precise inner speech that will rewrite your subconscious programming and set you on a trajectory that will make 2026 the most transformative year of your life. You do not need to be special to do this. You do not need to be spiritual or religious or educated. You just need to be willing. Willing to stop arguing for your limitations. Willing to stop repeating the same old story about why things are the way they are. Willing to plant a new seed and give it time to grow. Because here is the truth that most people never hear. You are not stuck. You have never been stuck. You have simply been watering the wrong seeds. Most people live their entire lives as passive observers of their own existence. They wake up, react to circumstances, complain about what is not working, hope that things will get better, and go to bed exhausted. And then they do it again tomorrow, and the day after that. They have no idea that they are the author of their experience. They do not realize that the voice in their head, the inner narrator that comments on everything, is writing the script of their life in real time. And because no one ever taught them how to direct that voice, how to choose their inner speech deliberately, they end up repeating whatever programming they absorbed as children. The worries of their parents, the limitations of their culture, the fears of their community, and their subconscious mind, loyal and obedient, says yes, this is who we are, and builds a life that matches. But you are different. You are here right now because some part of you knows there is another way. Some part of you has always suspected that life could be easier, richer, more joyful, more expansive. And that part of you is absolutely correct. There is a version of your life where money flows easily, where your body feels vibrant and healthy, where love is natural and abundant, where opportunities appear at the perfect time. And that version is not far away. It is not on the other side of years of therapy or decades of hard work. It is on the other side of a decision to take control of what you say to yourself every single day. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You are thinking, Joseph, I have tried affirmations before. I have said positive things to myself and nothing changed, and I understand that. But let me ask you this. When you tried affirmations, did you do it once and give up? Did you say the words while simultaneously thinking, this is stupid, this will never work? Did you repeat them mechanically without any feeling, without any belief, like you were reading a grocery list? Because that is not how this works. Your subconscious mind does not respond to empty words. It responds to feeling. It responds to conviction. It responds to repetition. When you say something once with doubt, you are planting a seed and immediately digging it up to check if it is growing. But when you say something every single day, with emotion, with faith, with the inner knowing that the creative power within you is already bringing it to pass, you are watering that seed. You are giving it sunlight. You are creating the conditions for it to break through the soil and become visible in your life. And that process takes time. Not years, not decades, but it does take consistency. It takes a commitment to stop rehearsing your problems and start declaring your desires. Let me tell you about a man I once knew. His name was David. David came to me years ago completely defeated. He had lost his business. His marriage was falling apart. He was buried in debt and could not see a way forward. He told me, Joseph, I have nothing left. I have tried everything and failed. And I looked at him and I said, no, you have not tried everything. You have not tried changing what you say to yourself every day. He looked at me like I was crazy. He said, words? You think words are going to save my business? And I said, no, not just words. The creative power of your subconscious mind, activated by your words, is going to rebuild your entire life. But you have to stop telling the story of failure and start telling the story of success. He was skeptical, but he was also desperate, and desperation can be a powerful motivator. So I gave him an affirmation, a simple statement. I wrote it down for him and I said, say this every morning when you wake up and every night before you sleep. Say it with feeling. Say it like it is already true. The affirmation was this: I am divinely guided and abundantly provided for. Infinite intelligence is revealing the perfect opportunity to me now. I am grateful for the wealth that flows to me easily and naturally. David looked at the piece of paper and I could see the doubt in his eyes. But he agreed to try. For 30 days. Every morning. Every night. And here is what happened. For the first week, nothing changed externally. But something started to shift inside him. He noticed he was less anxious. Less reactive. He started sleeping better. By the second week, he had an idea for a small consulting project. Nothing major, just a little spark. But instead of dismissing it like he normally would have, he followed it. He made a phone call. He sent an email. And that small project turned into a contract. And that contract led to a referral. And within 3 months, David had not only replaced his lost income, he had exceeded it. His marriage improved because he was no longer consumed by fear and stress. His health improved because he was no longer carrying the weight of defeat. And by the end of the year, he came back to me and said, Joseph, I do not recognize my life anymore. And I said, exactly. Because you stopped recognizing yourself as a failure and started recognizing yourself as a success. Your subconscious mind simply made your outer world match your inner conviction. This is not magic. This is law. The law of mind. The law of belief. The law that states you will experience in your outer world whatever you consistently impress upon your subconscious mind. And the primary tool for impressing your subconscious mind is your inner speech. What you say to yourself silently, repeatedly, emotionally, becomes your reality. So if you walk around saying, I am broke. I cannot afford that. Money is hard to come by. Nothing ever works out for me. Your subconscious accepts that as an instruction and works day and night to make it true. But if you walk around saying, I am prospered in every way, money comes to me easily, I am always in the right place at the right time, opportunities seek me out, your subconscious accepts that as an instruction instead, and begins to arrange circumstances, ideas, meetings, and events to make that true. Same mind, same power, different instruction, different result. Now, I want to be very honest with you about something. This is not about pretending your problems do not exist. It is not about toxic positivity or denying reality. If you are in debt, you are in debt. If you are sick, you are sick. If you are lonely, you are lonely. I am not asking you to lie to yourself about where you are. What I am asking you to do is stop making where you are your permanent address. Stop rehearsing it. Stop giving it all your emotional energy. Stop identifying with it as though it defines you. Because it does not. It is simply a condition. And conditions change. In fact, conditions have no choice but to change when you change the inner conversation. This is the part most people miss. They think circumstances create feelings. They think, I will feel abundant when I have money. I will feel loved when I meet the right person. I will feel confident when I achieve success. But it works the opposite way. Your feelings create your circumstances. When you feel abundant now, before the money shows up, you activate the creative forces that bring money. When you feel loved now, before the person appears, you become magnetic to love. When you feel confident now, before the achievement, you take the actions that lead to success. Feeling is the secret. I have said this 1,000 times and I will say it 1,000 more. You do not attract what you want. You attract what you are. And what you are is determined by how you feel. And how you feel is determined by what you say to yourself all day long. So the question is not whether this works. The question is, are you willing to do it? Are you willing to discipline your inner speech? Are you willing to catch yourself in the middle of a complaint and flip it into a declaration? Are you willing to spend 5 minutes every morning and every night programming your subconscious mind with the truth of who you are becoming instead of the lies of who you have been? Because if you are truly willing, then 2026 will be the year everything changes. Not because the world will change, but because you will. And when you change, your entire experience of the world changes with you. Let me take you back to a moment in my own life. A moment when I was younger, uncertain, and struggling to make sense of the invisible laws I was beginning to discover. I had read everything I could find about the mind, about consciousness, about the power of thought, but reading about it and living it are two very different things. I was working a job I did not enjoy. I was living in a small room. I had very little money, and every day I would look around at my circumstances and feel discouraged. I would think, where is the success I have been reading about? Where is the abundance? Why is my life not changing? And then one day I had a realization that altered the entire trajectory of my existence. I was sitting alone, frustrated, and I caught myself in the act of inner speech. I was silently saying to myself, this is never going to work. I am fooling myself. Nothing is changing. And in that moment, I stopped. I actually stopped mid-thought. And I said out loud, wait, what am I doing? I am using the most powerful force in the universe, my own consciousness, to argue against myself. I am impressing my subconscious mind with the very condition I claim to despise. I am fertilizing the seeds of my own failure. Think about this clearly. Your subconscious mind doesn't judge. It doesn't say, oh, she's just complaining. I won't take this seriously. No, it accepts everything. When you say, I can't afford this, your subconscious says, your wish is my command. When you say, I always get sick in winter, your deeper mind responds, absolutely. Let me arrange that for you. When you declare, I'm terrible with money, the universe itself conspires to prove you right. This is why your habitual thinking is so monumentally important. Not just what you think when you're meditating or praying, though that matters too, but what you think during the mundane moments. What are you saying to yourself in traffic? What story are you telling yourself when you check your bank account? What narrative runs through your mind when you look in the mirror? I've counseled thousands of people, And I can tell you this with absolute certainty. Your life is a perfect printout of your habitual thinking. Show me someone who constantly talks about their aches and pains, and I'll show you someone whose body obliges them with more aches and pains. Show me someone who speaks perpetually about lack and limitation, and I'll show you a life of poverty. Show me someone who dwells on past hurts and resentments, and I'll show you a present filled with conflict and bitterness. But here's the beautiful part. Here's where your power lies. The moment you become aware of this process, you can change it. Right now. Not tomorrow. Not after you finish reading this. Right now, in this very moment, you can begin to redirect the creative power of your thought. Let me give you a practical example. Suppose you're dealing with a financial challenge. The old pattern would be to worry, to complain, to tell everyone who will listen about your money troubles. You'd say things like, "I'm broke," or "I never have enough," or "money just slips through my fingers." And every single time you do this, you're impressing poverty consciousness deeper into your subconscious mind. The new way, the way of conscious creation, is entirely different. Instead, you begin to affirm, "Money flows to me easily and naturally. I am a magnet for prosperity. Abundance is my natural state." Now, your rational mind might scream, "But that's not true. Look at your bank account." And here's what you must understand. You're not lying. You're not denying reality. You're creating a new reality. You're impressing a new pattern upon the subconscious mind. And let me tell you something that will change how you see this entire process. Your subconscious doesn't know the difference between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. This isn't philosophy, this is neuroscience. This is how your brain actually works. When you imagine yourself in a new financial reality with emotional intensity, your brain fires the exact same neural pathways as if it were actually happening. You're literally rewiring your consciousness. You're building new mental highways that lead to prosperity instead of poverty. But here's where most people stumble. They try this for a day, maybe 2 days, and then they check their bank account. Nothing's changed yet. So what do? They go right back to their old mental diet. They start affirming lack again. They start talking about how broke they are, how expensive everything is, how they can't afford this or that. It's like planting a seed and then digging it up every single day to see if it's growing yet. You're destroying the very thing you're trying to create. Let me share something with you that I've witnessed hundreds of times. There's always a lag between the mental impression and the physical manifestation. Always. This is the testing period. This is where your faith is refined. This is where you prove to yourself and to the universe that you're serious about this transformation. During this lag time, you must remain faithful to your vision. You must continue to feel wealthy even when your bank account hasn't caught up yet. You must continue to think from wealth, not about wealth. This distinction is crucial. When you think about wealth, you're acknowledging separation from it. You're looking at it from the outside, wanting it, needing it, lacking it. But when you think from wealth, you're assuming the consciousness of already being wealthy. You're living in the end result mentally and emotionally. This is what I did during those dark days when I had nothing. Every single day, I would enter into a state of deep relaxation, what I call the drowsy state, right before sleep, and in that state, I would feel myself as already prosperous. I would imagine the feeling of financial freedom. I would hear people congratulating me on my success. I would feel the texture of fine clothes, the comfort of a beautiful home, the security of abundance. And you know what happened? Not immediately, but gradually, systematically, opportunities began to appear. A chance meeting here, an unexpected phone call there, an idea that seemed to come from nowhere. But these weren't coincidences. These were the natural outcomes of a mind that had been prepared, programmed, directed toward prosperity. The subconscious mind doesn't reason things out like the conscious mind. It accepts what you impress upon it and then works to bring it into manifestation. It's like a garden that will grow whatever seeds you plant, whether they're seeds of success or seeds of failure. It doesn't judge, it doesn't argue, it simply produces according to the nature of the seed. This is why your feelings are so crucially important. You can say affirmations all day long, but if you don't feel them, if you don't emotionally accept them as true, they're just words floating in the air. They have no power. But when you combine the mental image with the emotional feeling, when you unite thought and feeling, you create a powerful force that moves through your subconscious mind and out into your world. Think about falling in love. Nobody had to teach you how to feel love. When it happened, your whole being was involved. Your thoughts were consumed with the other person. Your emotions ran deep. Your imagination painted beautiful pictures of the future. And because of this total involvement, your entire personality changed. You became more confident, more energetic, more alive. This is the power of feeling combined with thought. The same principle applies to prosperity, health, success, or any other good thing you desire. You must fall in love with your desire. You must feel it so deeply that it becomes more real to you than your current circumstances. When you're indifferent to something, when you take a lukewarm approach to your desires, you cannot impress your subconscious mind. The subconscious responds to feeling, to emotion, to conviction. It responds to the heat of your desire, not to the tepid wish of, "It would be nice if." I've counseled thousands of people over the years, and I can tell you with absolute certainty, those who succeed are those who become obsessed in the healthiest sense of the word with their vision. They think about it constantly. They feel it in their bones. They taste it, smell it, live in it mentally before it manifests physically. This is not mere daydreaming. This is creative visualization charged with feeling. There's a world of difference. The daydreamer sits and imagines pleasant scenes but remains emotionally detached. He's like a person watching a movie about someone else's life. The successful practitioner of mental science, however, enters into the vision. He becomes the actor, not the spectator. He feels the reality of the experience now, in this present moment. Let me give you a practical example. Suppose you desire financial abundance. You can sit and think, "I want more money," 1,000 times a day, and nothing will happen. Those are just words, empty vessels without the wine of feeling. But suppose, instead, you close your eyes and imagine yourself opening your bank statement. You see the figures you desire. You feel the relief, the security, the freedom that comes with financial abundance. You feel the weight lifting from your shoulders. You imagine yourself paying your bills easily, helping your loved ones, contributing to causes you believe in. You feel grateful. You feel prosperous. You feel the thing done. Now you're impressing your subconscious mind. Now you're planting seeds in fertile soil. Now you're activating the law. The subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between a real experience and one vividly imagined with feeling. This is not theory, this is scientific fact. When you imagine something with sufficient feeling and repetition, your subconscious accepts it as real and begins to manifest it in your external world. Your subconscious mind is the most faithful servant you will ever have. It doesn't argue with you. It doesn't question your decisions. It simply accepts what you impress upon it and brings it into physical reality. Think of a farmer planting seeds in fertile soil. The soil doesn't discriminate between a weed seed and a flower seed. It accepts whatever is planted and brings forth a harvest according to the nature of the seed. Your subconscious mind works exactly the same way. If you plant thoughts of poverty, you will reap poverty. If you plant thoughts of abundance, you will reap abundance. Here's where most people make their critical error. They complain about their harvest while continuing to plant the same destructive seeds. They say they want wealth while constantly affirming, "I can't afford this. Money is so hard to come by. I never have enough." Then they wonder why their financial situation never changes. I've witnessed this pattern thousands of times. A woman came to me once, desperate because she couldn't find employment. She had been unemployed for 8 months and was growing increasingly anxious. When I asked her to describe her mental state, she revealed that every morning she woke up thinking, "Nobody wants to hire someone my age. The job market is terrible. I'll probably never find work." I explained to her that she was sabotaging herself with every thought. Her subconscious mind was faithfully creating circumstances that matched her dominant mental attitude. I instructed her to change her mental diet immediately. Instead of dwelling on rejection and impossibility, I told her to spend 10 minutes each morning and evening in a relaxed state, imagining herself already employed, not hoping to be employed, not wishing to be employed, but actually feeling the reality of being gainfully employed in a position that fulfilled her. I asked her to feel the satisfaction of doing meaningful work, to imagine colleagues congratulating her, to sense the weight of her paycheck in her hands. She followed these instructions faithfully. Within 3 weeks, an unexpected opportunity arose through a former colleague she hadn't spoken to in years. Within 5 weeks, she was employed in a position that paid more than her previous job and offered better benefits. What changed? Not the job market, not the economy, Not her age or qualifications. What changed was her mental state, and when her mental state changed, her external circumstances had no choice but to follow. I've seen this pattern so many times that I can recognize it immediately. A man comes to me, struggling in his business. He's working 16-hour days. He's marketing, networking, doing everything the experts tell him to do, but nothing is working. The money isn't coming. The clients aren't showing up, and he's exhausted. I ask him one question. What do you believe about money? And then it comes pouring out. His father went bankrupt. His mother always said, money doesn't grow on trees. He watched his family struggle, watched them fight about bills, watched the shame and stress that poverty created. And now, decades later, he's still living in that childhood home, not physically, but mentally. His subconscious mind is still running the same old program. Money is scarce. Money is hard. Money causes pain. And no amount of hard work can override that program. He could work 24 hours a day, and it wouldn't matter, because his inner conviction is creating his outer results. So what did we do? We stopped focusing on the external actions and started reprogramming the internal beliefs. Every night before sleep, he began to saturate his mind with a new idea. Money flows to me easily and constantly. I am a channel for divine abundance. Wealth is my birthright. At first, it felt like a lie. His conscious mind resisted, but he persisted. Night after night, he impressed this new belief upon his subconscious. And gradually, things began to shift. Not because the economy changed, not because he discovered some new marketing tactic, but because his inner world transformed, and the outer world had no choice but to reflect that transformation. Within months, opportunities appeared that he never could have forced or manufactured. A former colleague called with a major contract. A chance conversation at a coffee shop led to his biggest client. Money began flowing toward him because he had finally removed the mental block that was repelling it. This is how life works. You cannot outwork a negative belief system. You cannot hustle your way past your subconscious programming. The universe doesn't respond to your effort, it responds to your consciousness. This is why so many people feel exhausted. They're running on a treadmill of action, pouring energy into strategies and tactics, while their inner blueprint whispers a different story entirely. And that whisper always wins. I've watched individuals work 16-hour days, attend every networking event, read every book on success, implement every system, and still find themselves stuck at the same income level, the same relationship patterns, the same frustrating plateaus. Meanwhile, someone else seems to glide effortlessly into opportunities. What's the difference? It's not intelligence. It's not connections. It's not even talent. It's the mental equivalent they hold of themselves. Let me give you a concrete example. I once knew a woman who desperately wanted to expand her business. She took courses, hired consultants, worked herself to exhaustion. But every time an opportunity for growth appeared, a potential investor, a major client, a chance to scale, she would unconsciously sabotage it. She'd miss the meeting because of a sudden emergency. She'd underprice her services at the crucial moment. She'd find reasons why it wasn't the right time. When we finally sat down and examined her subconscious programming, the truth emerged. As a child, she'd watched her father expand his business, only to lose everything. Her mother had said repeatedly, "Stay small, stay safe. Ambition destroys families." That little girl absorbed those words like a sponge absorbs water, and 30 years later, that programming was still running the show. Her conscious mind wanted expansion. Her subconscious mind equated expansion with destruction. The subconscious won every single time, not because it was stronger, but because it was deeper. It operated beneath her awareness, pulling strings she didn't even know existed. This is the great tragedy I see everywhere. People fighting themselves without realizing it. They set goals that violate their deepest programming. They declare intentions that contradict their self-image. And then they wonder why life feels like pushing a boulder uphill. The answer isn't to push harder. The answer is to change the terrain. You must go to the place where the blueprint lives, the subconscious mind, and rewrite it. Not with willpower, not with affirmations you don't believe, but with the language the subconscious actually understands, feeling, repetition, and the state of consciousness just before sleep. This is why most self-help fails. It speaks to the wrong part of you. It tries to convince your conscious mind with logic, when your subconscious operates on an entirely different principle. Your subconscious doesn't debate. It doesn't weigh pros and cons. It simply accepts what you feel to be true, what you impress upon it with emotional conviction. Think about the last time you tried to change something about yourself through sheer determination. Maybe you wanted to lose weight, so you told yourself every morning, I will eat healthy today. I will resist temptation. How long did that last? A few days? A week? Then you found yourself standing in front of the refrigerator at midnight, and all that willpower evaporated like morning mist. Why? Because willpower is a conscious function. It's exhaustible. It's a muscle that tires. Your subconscious, meanwhile, never tires. It runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And if your subconscious has been programmed to seek comfort in food, to associate eating with emotional relief, then no amount of morning willpower can compete with that deeply embedded pattern. But here's the beautiful part. The same mechanism that locks you into negative patterns can free you from them. The subconscious mind doesn't care whether you're impressing it with something positive or negative. It's completely impartial. It's like soil. Soil doesn't care whether you plant roses or thorns. It will grow whatever you consistently plant in it. So the question becomes, what are you planting? What thoughts do you entertain most frequently? What images do you dwell on as you drift off to sleep? Because that, my friend, that is what you're instructing your subconscious to make real. I've seen people transform their entire lives by understanding this one principle. I knew a woman who had suffered from crippling anxiety for years. She had tried every therapy, every medication. Nothing worked. Then she learned to speak to her subconscious in its own language. Every night before sleep, she would imagine herself moving through her day with complete calm and confidence. She wouldn't just visualize it, she would feel it. She would inhabit that feeling of peace until it became more real than her anxiety. Within weeks, her anxiety began to dissolve. Not because she fought it, but because she had impressed a new pattern on her subconscious mind. Her story reveals a fundamental truth about how consciousness works. Resistance strengthens what you resist. Fighting anxiety creates more anxiety. Battling insomnia keeps you awake. Forcing confidence makes you feel like a fraud. The subconscious doesn't respond to force. It responds to impression. Think of it like photography in the old days. You couldn't force an image onto film by pressing harder. You created the right conditions, light, time, chemistry, and the image appeared naturally. Your subconscious works the same way. You don't force it, you impress it. This is why affirmations fail for most people. They repeat positive statements while their deeper mind screams the opposite. A woman says, I am confident while feeling terrified. A man affirms, I am wealthy, while his stomach churns with financial fear. The words go in one direction, the feeling goes in another, and the subconscious listens to the feeling every time. Your subconscious is like a faithful servant. It doesn't judge whether your beliefs are true or false, helpful or harmful. It simply accepts what you consistently impress upon it and works day and night to make it real in your experience. I once worked with a man who was convinced he was unlucky in business. Every venture he started collapsed. Every partnership ended badly. He saw himself as cursed. And sure enough, his subconscious made certain his belief was validated in reality. We didn't try to change his circumstances first. We changed the mental image he held of himself. Instead of affirming, I am lucky while believing the opposite, we started smaller. We began with the simple recognition. My subconscious has been faithfully producing results based on my old belief. It can just as faithfully produce results based on a new belief. This realization was crucial. He stopped fighting his past failures. He stopped seeing himself as defective. He understood that his subconscious had simply been doing its job, manifesting what he believed. Every night before sleep, he would visualize himself as a man whose business dealings flowed smoothly. He felt the satisfaction of successful partnerships. He imagined shaking hands on deals that benefited everyone involved. He impressed this new pattern repeatedly on his subconscious mind. Within 6 months, his business life transformed completely. Not through struggle, not through positive thinking alone, but through changing the deep impression his subconscious was working from. The law is impersonal and absolute. It works for everyone, whether they know about it or not. You see, the subconscious mind doesn't argue with you. It doesn't say, well, that's not a very good idea. It doesn't judge whether your thoughts are constructive or destructive, good or bad, true or false. It simply accepts what you impress upon it and begins to express it in your life. This is why two people can face identical circumstances and have completely different outcomes. One person impresses their subconscious with thoughts of limitation, fear, and defeat. The other impresses their subconscious with thoughts of abundance, courage, and victory. The circumstances are the same, but the inner impressions are different, and therefore the results are different. I remember a woman who came to me, absolutely convinced she couldn't learn new things. She had been told as a child that she was slow, that she didn't pick things up quickly, and for 40 years, she had lived according to that suggestion. Every time an opportunity came for advancement at work, she turned it down. Every time she thought about learning a new skill, that old voice echoed in her mind. "You're too slow. You can't learn." What had happened? A careless remark by a teacher when she was 7 years old had planted a seed in her subconscious mind. And that seed had grown into a massive tree of limitation that overshadowed her entire life. But here's the crucial point. That limiting belief was no more true than its opposite. It was simply the impression that had been accepted and acted upon by her subconscious. We worked together to plant a new seed. Every night before sleep, and every morning upon waking, she would affirm, "I am intelligent and capable. I learn easily and quickly. My mind is alert and receptive to new knowledge." At first, it felt false to her. Her conscious mind rebelled against it. But she persisted, knowing that repetition and feeling would eventually impress her subconscious. Within 6 months, she had learned to use complex software at her job, something she had avoided for years. Within a year, she had been promoted twice. The change wasn't in her native intelligence that had always been there. The change was in the impression held by her subconscious mind. And once that impression changed, her entire experience of reality shifted accordingly. This is the great secret. You can deliberately choose what you impress upon your subconscious mind. You are not at the mercy of circumstances. You are not a victim of your past, your environment, or your genetics. You hold in your hands, or rather, in your mind, the power to reshape your entire life. But this power remains dormant until you understand how to wield it consciously and deliberately. Let me share with you another case that demonstrates this principle beautifully. A businessman came to me absolutely convinced he was destined for bankruptcy. The economy was challenging, his competitors seemed to be winning, and he had already lost several important accounts. Every morning, he woke up with a knot in his stomach, rehearsing in his mind all the ways his business could fail. He would lie awake at night, visualizing creditors at his door, imagining the humiliation of closing his doors. I said to him, "You are using the law perfectly, but in reverse. You are impressing failure upon your subconscious mind with tremendous feeling and repetition. Your subconscious doesn't judge whether this is good or bad for you. It simply accepts the impression and works to make it real." This seemed to startle him. He had never considered that his worry was actually a form of creative visualization, creative destruction in his case. I taught him to reverse the process. Each morning and evening, he would sit quietly and imagine his business thriving. He would feel the satisfaction of signing new contracts, see himself shaking hands with delighted clients, experience the relief and joy of reviewing healthy financial statements. Most importantly, I instructed him to accompany these mental images with feeling real, genuine emotion as though these things were already true. Within 6 months, his business had completely turned around. New opportunities appeared seemingly out of nowhere. A client he had written off returned with a major contract. He found himself making decisions with clarity and confidence he hadn't felt in years. Had the economy changed? Not significantly. Had his competitors disappeared? No. What changed was the pattern impressed upon his subconscious mind, and his subconscious, ever faithful, began to rearrange his world to match that pattern. This is not magic. This is law. The law of mind is as reliable as the law of gravity. When you understand how to work with it rather than against it, you stop struggling and start flowing with the creative power that built galaxies and brings forth spring from winter's death. You see, most people live their entire lives never discovering this secret. They go to their graves believing that life happens times to times them, that they are victims of circumstance, that their lot was cast by fate or luck or the social position they were born into. And so they struggle, they fight, they push against an unforgiving world, exhausting themselves in battles that need never be fought. But you are different. You wouldn't be here, reading these words, if some part of you didn't already know there was another way. Some inner voice has been whispering to you, hasn't it? Telling you that you were meant for more. That the limitations you see around you are not the final word on your life. That voice is your deeper self, your subconscious mind, calling you to awaken to your true nature as a creative being. Now, let me share with you a truth that will change everything if you truly grasp it. Your subconscious mind does not argue with you. It does not debate. It does not question whether what you're telling it is true or false, good or bad, possible or impossible. It simply accepts. It receives the impressions you give it through your habitual thinking and feeling, and then it goes to work to manifest those impressions in your outer world. This is why the man who constantly says, "I can't afford that," finds himself perpetually broke. This is why the woman who repeats, "I always get sick in winter," catches every cold that comes around. This is why the person who believes good things never happen to me experiences one disappointment after another. They are not cursed. They are not unlucky. They are simply demonstrating the law. Their subconscious mind is faithfully reproducing in their experience exactly what they have planted there through their thoughts and words. The wonderful, liberating truth is this: you can change what you're planting, right now, today, this very moment. You can begin to impress your subconscious mind with new ideas, new images, new feelings. You can feed it thoughts of health instead of sickness, abundance instead of lack, success instead of failure, love instead of loneliness. And your subconscious, being impersonal and obedient, will accept these new impressions just as readily as it accepted the old ones. But, and this is crucial, you must be consistent, you must be persistent, you must feel the reality of what you're affirming. You see, many people affirm once or twice, then look around and say, "Well, it didn't work." But that's like planting a seed and digging it up the next day to see if it's growing. You wouldn't do that with a garden, would you? You plant the seed, you water it, you trust the process, and you wait for nature to do its work. Your subconscious mind operates on the same principle. When you plant a thought, a desire, an affirmation, you must give it time to take root. You must nourish it with repetition, with feeling, with faith, and most importantly, you must leave it alone. Don't dig it up with doubt. Don't poison it with fear. Trust that the creative power within you is already at work, already orchestrating the circumstances and events that will bring your desire into manifestation. I've seen this happen countless times. A woman came to me once, desperate for employment. She had been out of work for months, and every door seemed closed to her. I taught her to affirm every morning and every night, "I am now employed in a wonderful position. I am appreciated, well paid, and happy in my work." At first, nothing seemed to happen. She was tempted to give up, but I urged her to continue, to feel the joy of being employed, to imagine herself at work, productive and fulfilled. 3 weeks later, she received a phone call from a company she had applied to months earlier. They had just had an unexpected opening, and they wanted her to start immediately. The position was better than anything she had hoped for: better pay, better hours, better environment. Was this coincidence? Absolutely not. Her subconscious mind had been working behind the scenes, drawing to her the perfect opportunity. But it required her faith, her persistence, her unwavering belief. This is the key. You must impress your subconscious mind so deeply that it accepts your desire as fact. And how do you do that? Through repetition and feeling. Say your affirmation with conviction. Feel it in your body. Let it stir your emotions. When you affirm, "I am healthy," don't just mouth the words, feel the vitality coursing through your veins. When you affirm, "I am prosperous," feel the security, the abundance, the freedom that prosperity brings. This feeling dimension of your affirmation is what breathes life into your words. It's the difference between reciting a prayer mechanically and praying with your whole heart. Your subconscious mind responds to feeling-tone thoughts. It accepts as true what you feel to be true. I've worked with countless individuals who struggled with their affirmations until they learned this simple truth. They would repeat their statements dutifully, almost like a homework assignment, and wonder why nothing changed. The moment they infused those same words with genuine emotion, the moment they allowed themselves to feel the joy, the relief, the gratitude of their desire already fulfilled, everything shifted. The subconscious accepted the impression, and manifestation followed naturally. Consider this. When you worry, you're not just thinking negative thoughts, you're feeling them deeply. Worry is thought charged with fear. Anxiety is imagination applied negatively, with intense emotion. If negative emotions have the power to create negative conditions in your life, then positive emotions charged with faith have infinitely greater power to create positive conditions. This is why I encourage you to make your affirmation time a sacred practice. Find a quiet place where you won't be disturbed. Sit comfortably, close your eyes, and begin to relax your body completely. Take a few deep breaths. Then, speak your affirmation slowly, deliberately, with feeling. See it, feel it, know it to be true in this very moment. Some of my students find it helpful to affirm while in a drowsy, sleepy state just before drifting off at night or upon first waking in the morning. In these moments, the conscious mind is less active, less prone to argument and doubt. The gateway to the subconscious stands wider. Your affirmations can slip past the watchman at the gate and plant themselves deeply in the fertile soil of your deeper mind. I have seen people achieve remarkable transformations using this simple practice. A businessman who came to me, drowning in debt and anxiety, began speaking to his subconscious each night before sleep. I am prosperous. Money flows to me easily and naturally. I am a magnet for financial success. Within months, opportunities he had never noticed before began appearing. A chance conversation led to a new partnership. An old contact remembered him at precisely the right moment. What changed? Not the external world initially, but his inner world, which then reshaped everything around him. The subconscious, you see, is extraordinarily literal. It does not understand jokes, sarcasm, or complex reasoning. When you say, "I am healthy," it begins working to make that true. When you say, "I am always sick," it works just as diligently to fulfill that command. It serves you faithfully, without judgment, accepting whatever you consistently tell it as the blueprint for your reality. This is why your self-talk matters so profoundly. Every time you say, "I can't afford that," you are giving your subconscious an instruction. Every time you say, "I never get lucky," you are programming your deeper mind. These casual remarks, tossed off without thought, become the architecture of your future. But here is the magnificent truth. You can change this programming at any time. You are not locked into the patterns established in childhood or the beliefs inherited from others. Your subconscious mind is infinitely flexible, endlessly receptive to new instruction. The key is persistence and feeling. When you impress your subconscious with a new idea, you must do so with emotional intensity. A half-hearted affirmation spoken mechanically will produce weak results. But an affirmation spoken with conviction, felt deeply in your heart, accompanied by the feeling of its reality, this penetrates deeply. This creates change. Imagine you are already the person you wish to become. Feel it. If you desire confidence, feel confident now. Stand as a confident person stands, breathe as they breathe. When you impress this feeling onto your subconscious repeatedly, it begins to accept this as your natural state. Then, almost magically, circumstances arrange themselves to match this inner conviction. The subconscious is not constrained by time as we understand it. It works ceaselessly, day and night, processing millions of bits of information, guiding your body's functions, and steering you toward the fulfillment of your dominant thoughts. Give it a worthy goal. The moment you shift your attention from what you fear to what you desire, you initiate a fundamental transformation in your mental and physical reality. This is not mysticism, this is the natural law of mind in action. Let me share with you a principle that changed everything for me. Asterisk. Your subconscious mind responds to your habitual thinking. Asterisk. Not your occasional wishes. Not your fleeting hopes. Your times, habitual times, mental patterns. The thoughts you return to again and again, especially in those quiet moments before sleep and upon waking, these are the impressions that sink deepest into the fertile soil of your subconscious mind. I've witnessed countless individuals who wondered why their lives remained unchanged despite their prayers, their affirmations, their desperate pleas to the universe. And when we examined their mental habits together, the answer became immediately clear. They were affirming prosperity for 5 minutes in the morning, then spending the remaining hours of the day worrying about bills, complaining about their circumstances, and mentally rehearsing worst-case scenarios. You cannot plant wheat and harvest thistles. You cannot plant thoughts of lack and harvest abundance. The law is impersonal and exact. Here's what I want you to understand with absolute clarity. Asterisk. Your subconscious mind accepts whatever you genuinely feel to be true. Asterisk. Notice I said times feel asterisk. not merely think. You can repeat "I am wealthy" 1,000 times, but if your feeling is one of desperation, poverty, and anxiety, then desperation is what you're impressing upon your subconscious. The feeling is the secret. When a thought is joined with feeling, it becomes a conviction, and conviction is the gateway through which your desires enter the realm of manifestation. I remember working with a woman who had been trying for years to overcome a deep-seated fear. She would tell me, "Dr. Murphy, I've tried everything. I've said every affirmation. Nothing works." So I asked her a simple question. "When you make these affirmations, what do you feel?" She paused, and tears came to her eyes. "I feel like I'm lying to myself," she admitted. There was the answer. Her words said one thing, but her feeling, the real language of the subconscious, said another. And this is where most people make the fatal mistake. They try to argue with the feeling. They try to override it with more words, more affirmations, more willpower. But you cannot convince the subconscious mind with logic. You cannot bully it into submission. The subconscious speaks the language of feeling, not argument. I told her something that changed everything for her. "Don't affirm what you want," I said. "Affirm what you can feel." She looked puzzled at first, so I explained. If saying "I am wealthy" makes you feel like a liar, then that affirmation is doing more harm than good. It's creating internal resistance, which is the opposite of what we want. Instead, start where you are. Affirm something that bridges the gap between your current feeling and your desired outcome. For her, that meant changing her affirmation to something like, "I am open to receiving abundance," or "Every day, I am becoming more financially secure." These statements didn't trigger that internal alarm that screams "liar." They felt possible, they felt true, and most importantly, they felt peaceful. That feeling of peace, that inner harmony, is the sign that your conscious and subconscious minds are finally working together instead of against each other. This principle applies to every area of life. If you're lonely and you affirm "I am surrounded by loving friends," but you feel nothing but emptiness when you say it, you're not impressing your subconscious. You're just creating more separation between what you say and what you feel. But if you affirm "I am becoming more open and friendly," or "I attract kind people into my life," and these statements create a small shift in your feeling, a tiny opening of possibility, that's when the magic begins. The subconscious doesn't judge the size of your belief. It doesn't care if you take massive leaps or tiny steps. What it cares about is authenticity. Is this real for you right now? Can you feel it, even just a little bit? That genuine feeling, however small, is worth more than 1,000 empty affirmations shouted with false enthusiasm. Because when you speak from that place of genuine feeling, something shifts in your consciousness. You're no longer trying to convince yourself of something you don't believe. You're not wrestling with doubt, creating an internal civil war between what you're saying and what you're feeling. Instead, you're building from a foundation of authentic experience, however modest that foundation might be. I've watched people transform their entire relationship with this practice simply by making this one adjustment. They stop performing affirmations and start cultivating genuine feeling states. And the difference shows up immediately in their results. Let me share something that might surprise you. The most powerful sessions I've ever witnessed weren't the ones where people worked themselves into an emotional frenzy. They were the quiet moments when someone closed their eyes and genuinely felt, even for just 30 seconds, what it would be like to already have what they desired. No drama, no theatrics, just authentic feeling. There was a woman who came to me after months of failed attempts at manifestation. She had been doing everything right on paper: visualization, affirmations, vision boards, but nothing was moving in her life. We sat together, and I asked her to stop trying so hard, stop trying to generate feeling. Instead, I asked her to remember a moment in her life when she felt truly content, not ecstatic, not thrilled, just content. She thought for a moment, then shared a memory of sitting in her grandmother's kitchen on a Sunday afternoon, drinking tea, watching dust particles float in the sunlight. Nothing special happened that day, but she felt completely at peace. I asked her to recall that feeling. Not the scene, not the details, just that sense of quiet contentment. And once she had it, I asked her to imagine that her desired outcome had already happened. Not to visualize it happening, to feel as though it already had. While maintaining that same quality of peaceful contentment, her whole body relaxed. Her breathing deepened. And for the first time in months, she stopped fighting herself. 3 weeks later, the opportunity she'd been seeking appeared through a channel she never expected, not because she forced it, because she finally stopped blocking it with desperation and doubt disguised as enthusiasm. This is what I mean by feeling is the secret, not manufactured emotion, not performance, but genuine feeling that arises when you stop trying to convince yourself and start experiencing, even briefly, the reality you desire as though it were already so. Now, here's where most people stumble. They say the words, they visualize the scene, they even feel a flicker of emotion, but then, they stop. They treat it like a task they've completed, like checking off an item on a spiritual to-do list. Prayer answered. Moving on? No. The practice doesn't end when you open your eyes. In fact, that's when the real work begins, because what you do in the hours that follow your prayer will either reinforce the new assumption or destroy it completely. Think about it this way. If you truly believed something wonderful had happened to you, how would you move through your day? Would you be anxious? Would you be checking your phone every 5 minutes for confirmation? Would you be telling everyone who'll listen about your problems? No. You'd be calm, expectant. You'd carry yourself differently. There would be a quiet confidence in your demeanor, a lightness in your step, because people who have received good news don't walk around with the weight of the world on their shoulders. This is what I mean by living from the end. It's not about pretending or putting on a show for others. It's about allowing the feeling of your answered prayer to color your emotional state throughout the day. When doubt creeps in, and it will, you return to that feeling. You don't argue with the doubt. You don't try to fight it with logic or affirmations shouted louder. You simply return to the feeling. This is your anchor. This is your practice. Not once a day, not only during your dedicated prayer time, but continuously, as often as you remember. You return to the awareness that what you desired has already been given to you in consciousness. And here's what begins to happen. The more you return to this feeling, the more natural it becomes. What felt like pretending at first starts to feel real. What seemed impossible begins to feel inevitable. Your subconscious mind, which doesn't distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a physical one, begins to accept this new state as fact. And here's what happens next that most people never expect. The external world begins to shift, not through your effort, but through your assumption. You'll receive a phone call you weren't expecting. You'll bump into someone who knows someone who's hiring. You'll discover an opportunity that wasn't there yesterday, or perhaps was there all along, but you were blind to it because your consciousness wasn't tuned to that frequency. This isn't magic. This isn't wishful thinking. This is the fundamental law of mind in operation. Your consciousness is creative. It doesn't just observe reality, it selects which version of reality you experience. An assumption is the mechanism by which you make that selection. Think of someone who assumes they're unlucky. They'll walk through a room full of opportunities and see only obstacles. They'll meet helpful people and suspect ulterior motives. They'll receive good news and immediately brace for the other shoe to drop. Their assumption acts as a filter, and the filter determines what passes through into their experience. Now think of someone who assumes things work out for them. They encounter the same obstacles, but they see them as temporary. They meet the same people, but they recognize allies and supporters. They face the same uncertainties, but they remain confident in a positive outcome. Same external circumstances, completely different experience, all because of assumption. The question isn't whether you're assuming. You're always assuming something. The question is, what are you assuming? Are you assuming scarcity or abundance? Are you assuming rejection or acceptance? Are you assuming struggle or ease? Because whatever you're assuming, you're also experiencing. And here's the beautiful part, the part that gives you complete freedom. You can change your assumption at any moment. You don't need permission. You don't need to earn it. You don't need to prove you deserve it. You simply decide to assume differently. And the moment you do, your entire trajectory begins to shift. I've watched people transform their marriages by changing their assumption about their spouse. Instead of assuming they never listen to me, they assumed they understand and value me. And without confrontation, without demands, the relationship transformed because their new assumption changed how they showed up, which changed how their partner responded. This is why I tell people, stop trying to control circumstances. Stop trying to manipulate people. Stop exhausting yourself with endless action that comes from fear and lack. Instead, go within. Change the assumption. Let the subconscious mind, which controls everything beneath the surface of your awareness, reorganize your world to match your new inner conviction. I knew a salesman who struggled for years. He would walk into every meeting, assuming the client wouldn't buy. He didn't say this out loud, of course. He smiled, he pitched, he followed the script, but underneath, his dominant assumption was rejection. And guess what his results reflected? Rejection, month after month. Then one day, after studying these principles, he made a deliberate choice. Before every meeting, he assumed the sale was already done. He walked in with the inner feeling of a man who had already succeeded. His words didn't change much. His pitch stayed mostly the same, but his assumption had shifted, and within weeks, his closing rate doubled. The outer circumstances rearranged themselves to reflect his inner state. This is not magical thinking. This is how reality operates. Your subconscious mind is the builder of your body, the orchestrator of your circumstances, the bridge between your inner world and your outer experience. It takes orders only from your dominant assumptions. It doesn't argue. It doesn't question. It simply creates what you habitually assume to be true. So if you want to change your life, you must change your assumptions. Not tomorrow. Not when circumstances improve. Now. Right now. In this moment, you have the power to assume differently about yourself, about your future, about what is possible for you. This is the turning point. This is the moment where you stop waiting for permission from the world and start claiming what is already yours in consciousness. You see, most people are living their lives in reverse. They're waiting for the evidence before they'll believe. They say, show me the money, and then I'll feel abundant. Give me the relationship, and then I'll feel loved. Heal my body, and then I'll feel whole. But this is not how the law works. This is not how your mind creates your reality. The feeling must come first. The assumption must precede the evidence. You cannot wait for circumstances to change before you change your inner state. That's like planting a seed and then digging it up every day to see if it's growing. You'll destroy the very thing you're trying to create. I want you to understand something profound. Your external world is always on a time delay. It's showing you what you assumed days, weeks, sometimes months ago. When you look at your bank account today, you're seeing the fruit of consciousness from your past. When you look at your relationships, your health, your career, all of it is yesterday's thinking made visible. So if you judge yourself by present circumstances, you're making a fundamental error. You're looking at the fruit and denying the new seed you've just planted. You're letting the harvest from old thoughts convince you that new thoughts have no power. But they do. Your new assumption, held faithfully, will externalize just as surely as the old one did. The law doesn't play favorites. It doesn't say, well, that negative belief you held for 20 years, that one I'll manifest instantly. But this positive vision you've held for 3 days, that's going to take forever. No, the law is impersonal. It operates on one principle. Consciousness creates reality. Now, here's what happens when you truly grasp this. You stop being a beggar. You stop going to your imagination with your hat in your hand, saying, please, if it's not too much trouble, could I possibly have what I desire? Instead, you go to your imagination as a king entering his own treasury. You claim what is yours. You assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled not as a technique, not as a manipulation, but as a recognition of what already exists in the invisible realm. And here is where most people stumble. They assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled for a moment, perhaps in their morning meditation, and then they spend the remaining 23 hours of the day contradicting that assumption. They declare their wealth in the morning, then worry about bills in the afternoon. They claim their perfect health during visualization, then spend dinner discussing their symptoms with anyone who will listen. They affirm their loving relationship in their mind, then scroll through their phone looking for evidence of abandonment. This is not assumption. This is wishful thinking interrupted by habitual doubt. True assumption means you remain faithful to your new state regardless of what the outer world presents. When the bank statement shows lack, you do not deny the physical fact, but you refuse to accept it as your reality. You know it is simply the outpicturing of yesterday's consciousness. You know that what you are assuming now is creating tomorrow's facts, and you remain loyal to your assumption with the fidelity of a devoted spouse. I have watched people transform their entire lives not through years of effort, but through weeks of sustained assumption. The assumption itself does no work. It is not the assumption that brings your desire into being. Rather, assumption opens the channel through which the infinite organizing intelligence can operate. When you assume you are wealthy, you automatically begin to think wealthy thoughts, make wealthy decisions, and take wealthy actions. Not because you force yourself, but because those behaviors are natural to the state you have assumed. A wealthy person does not agonize over small purchases. They do not check their account balance with anxiety. They do not speak constantly about how expensive everything is. These behaviors are not wealthy behaviors, and if you are truly assuming wealth, they will naturally fall away from you like a coat that no longer fits. You will not need to discipline yourself out of poor habits. The assumption of wealth will dissolve those habits automatically because they are incompatible with the state you now occupy. This is the test of true assumption. Does your inner speech match your desired state? Listen to the conversations you have with yourself throughout the day. What are you saying when no one else can hear? Are you affirming your wish fulfilled? Or are you rehearsing your problems? Are you speaking from the end, or are you speaking from the lack? Your inner speech reveals your true assumption, and your true assumption is creating your future at this very moment. Let me tell you about a woman who came to me years ago. She was absolutely desperate. Her business was failing, creditors were calling, and every morning she would wake up rehearsing the same catastrophic inner dialogue. I'm going broke. I can't pay my bills. Everything is falling apart. She would lie in bed, and before her feet even touched the floor, she was already living in the end of bankruptcy. I asked her a simple question. What would you be saying to yourself if this situation were resolved? What inner speech would flow naturally from the woman who has financial freedom? She looked at me, confused at first. Then slowly, she began to speak from that assumption. I would be saying, "Thank God my business is thriving. I'm so grateful I have more than enough." I would wake up feeling secure, peaceful. Then that, I told her, must become your inner speech now. Not tomorrow. Not when the evidence appears. Now. She committed to this. For 30 days, she disciplined her inner talking. Every time the old conversation started, "I'm broke, I'm failing," she would catch it and consciously shift. "I am financially secure, my business prospers." She didn't deny her present circumstances, she simply refused to give them the power of her inner speech. Within weeks, opportunities began appearing that seemed miraculous. A client she'd forgotten about returned with a large contract. A debt she thought was lost was suddenly repaid. Her business turned around completely. Was it magic? No. It was law. She changed her inner speech, which changed her assumption, which changed her state of being, which changed her world. You see, most people are walking around having arguments with people who aren't even there. They're replaying conversations from yesterday, preparing defenses for tomorrow, justifying themselves to phantom critics. And all of this inner speech is hardening into their future reality. What are you saying when no one is listening? That is the question that will transform your life. Your inner speech must become the speech of the person you intend to be. Not the person you hope to be someday, the person you are becoming right now through assumption. Because here's what most people do, they affirm with their lips while they deny with their thoughts. They say, "I am prosperous," while thinking, "But look at my bank account." They declare, "I am healthy," while focusing on every ache and pain. This is not assumption. This is contradiction. And contradiction produces nothing but more confusion. Your inner speech must be consistent. It must be unwavering. When you catch yourself thinking from your old state, stop. Gently redirect your attention. Return to the assumption of your wish fulfilled. This is not suppression, it's selection. You're choosing which thoughts to entertain, which conversations to have with yourself. I remember a woman who came to one of my lectures, desperate to heal a relationship with her estranged daughter. They hadn't spoken in 3 years. Every day, this woman's inner speech was filled with resentment, hurt, and imagined arguments. She should apologize first. She's the one who was wrong. Why doesn't she call? Round and round, the same bitter thoughts. I asked her a simple question. What would you be saying to yourself if you and your daughter were reconciled? What would your inner conversation sound like then? She paused, her eyes softened. I would be thinking, "Thank God we worked it out." I would be grateful. I would remember the good times. Then think those thoughts now, I told her. Speak to yourself from reconciliation, not from separation. She began to change her inner speech. Instead of rehearsing old wounds, she silently repeated, "My daughter and I are at peace. We understand each other. Love has healed everything," not as a desperate wish, but as a calm acknowledgement of what is true in consciousness. Within 2 months, her daughter reached out. The reconciliation was natural, effortless, as though it had always been inevitable, because in consciousness, it had been. The outer world simply caught up with the inner assumption. This is the power we're talking about. Not magic, not manipulation. Simply the law of consciousness expressing itself. What you assume within, you experience without. What you speak to yourself in the silence of your mind becomes the speech of your world. So guard your inner speech as you would guard your most precious possession. Because it is. It's the creative power of God within you, shaping every moment of your existence. Now, let me share with you something that will transform the way you approach every challenge in your life. When you understand that your inner speech is the blueprint, you realize that you're never fighting circumstances, you're always building new ones. I've watched people struggle for years, decades even, trying to change their outer world through force and effort. They push, they strive, they exhaust themselves. And yet, nothing fundamentally shifts. Do you know why? Because while they're pushing against their circumstances with their actions, they're reinforcing those same circumstances with their inner speech. It's like trying to drive forward while keeping your foot on the brake. The engine revs, you burn fuel, but you don't move. And then you wonder why progress is so difficult. But when you align your inner speech with your desire, when every silent word you speak to yourself assumes the reality you wish to experience, something miraculous happens. The path opens. Opportunities appear. The right people enter your life. Obstacles that seemed immovable simply dissolve. This isn't magic, this is law, the law of consciousness, the law of assumption. Let me tell you about a woman who came to one of my lectures years ago. She was in a marriage that had grown cold, distant. She told me her husband hadn't said, "I love you," in over 3 years. She'd tried everything, talking, counseling, even ultimatums. Nothing worked. I asked her one simple question. "What do you say to yourself about your husband when you think of him?" She paused. Then, with complete honesty, she said, "I tell myself he doesn't love me anymore, that he's emotionally distant, that our marriage is dying." "There," I said, "is your answer. You're creating what you're affirming." I instructed her to change her inner speech completely. Every time she thought of her husband, she was to silently say, "He loves me deeply. He expresses his love freely. Our marriage is filled with warmth and affection." She looked skeptical. "But that's not true," she protested. "Not yet," I replied. "But your inner speech doesn't describe what is. It creates what will be." She committed to the practice. 6 weeks later, she wrote to me. Her husband had become affectionate again, expressing his feelings openly. The marriage had transformed. But here's what she understood that most people miss. Her husband hadn't really changed. Her consciousness had changed. And her new state of consciousness created a new experience of her husband. This is the power we're talking about. This is what happens when you take command of your inner speech. The real beauty of this practice is that it works in all areas of your life. It's not limited to relationships or finances. One man came to me troubled about his business. He was constantly telling himself, "The market's against me. Competition is too fierce. I can't keep up." And sure enough, his business reflected these statements perfectly. I asked him, "What would you say if your business was thriving?" He thought for a moment and said, "I'd say my business is expanding. Customers find me easily. I provide exactly what the market needs." "Then say that," I told him. "Say it now. Say it consistently. Make it your inner speech." He looked doubtful, but he committed to it. Within weeks, he received an unexpected partnership offer. A new distribution channel opened up. His perspective shifted, and opportunities he'd been blind to suddenly became visible. The market hadn't changed. The competition hadn't changed. His consciousness changed, and his consciousness created his experience. This is why I emphasize inner speech over affirmations done mechanically. When you merely repeat words without conviction, you're like someone painting over rust without treating it first. The rust will show through. But when you deliberately choose your inner speech, when you consciously direct the stream of your thoughts throughout the day, you're treating the cause, not the symptom. Let me give you something practical right now. For the next 24 hours, become aware of your inner speech. Don't try to change it yet. Just notice it. Notice what you say to yourself about your circumstances. Notice the tone. Notice whether you speak to yourself as a victor or a victim. This awareness alone will be revolutionary for many of you. You'll discover you've been your own worst enemy, constantly undermining yourself with negative inner speech. But once you see it, you can change it. And changing it changes everything. Let me share something that might surprise you. The subconscious mind doesn't argue with you. It doesn't debate. It doesn't say, well, I don't think that's quite right. It simply accepts what you persistently tell it as fact. This is both the great danger and the magnificent opportunity of your mental life. When you repeatedly say, I can't afford that, your subconscious doesn't question whether it's true. It accepts it and begins organizing your life around that limitation. When you say, I always get sick in winter, you're giving your subconscious a command, and it faithfully executes that command by lowering your resistance and manifesting the illness you've declared as inevitable. But here's the beautiful flip side. When you begin to affirm health, prosperity, success, and love, your subconscious accepts these declarations with the same faithful obedience. It begins to orchestrate circumstances, insights, and opportunities that align with your new self-concept. I've watched this transformation happen thousands of times. A woman comes to me convinced she's unattractive, unlovable, destined to be alone. She's been telling herself this story for so long that she believes it's simply the truth about who she is. But it's not truth, it's a habit of thought that has calcified into a belief. We begin the process of changing her inner speech. Instead of, nobody wants me, she begins to affirm, I am loving and lovable. The right person is being drawn to me now. At first, these words feel hollow, even ridiculous to her, but she persists. Day after day, she replaces the old pattern with the new one, and something remarkable happens. Not overnight, but gradually, she begins to carry herself differently. There's a new light in her eyes, a confidence in her bearing. She starts accepting invitations she would have declined before. She speaks with more warmth and openness. And almost inevitably, the right person appears not by magic, but by the natural unfolding of her transformed consciousness. The principle is always the same. Change the inner, and the outer must follow. Your subconscious is the soil, your thoughts are the seeds, and your life is the harvest. You've been planting weeds and wondering why you're not getting roses.